A mission to Mars? I mean, this is going to be unlike anything humanity has ever even attempted. We're talking about a journey so long, so isolated, that it promises to be both absolutely terrifying and somehow mind-numbingly boring at the same time. And to survive it, well, the very definition of what it means to have the right stuff is going to have to change.
So, let me ask you, what does the perfect astronaut look like? Go ahead, close your eyes and picture one. Do you see a steely-eyed test pilot? Or maybe a brilliant scientist in a lab coat? That classic image is really powerful, but for a trip to Mars, it might actually be dangerously outdated.
Yeah, because for a multi-year journey to the red planet, NASA might need to start looking beyond its usual very qualified candidates. They might need to hire a totally different kind of person, a true explorer.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get into why Mars is just a whole different ballgame. Then, we'll trace how the idea of an astronaut has changed over time. We'll meet this new breed of explorer, and we'll tackle the tricky paradox of risk. After that, we'll uncover the psychological secret weapon for survival. And finally, we'll piece together what the right stuff really means for the future. All right, first up, Mars. And let's be super clear here. This is not just another space flight. This is an entirely new category of human endurance. Let's just put this in perspective for a second. A trip up to the International Space Station, that can take just a few hours. Astronauts hang out there for about 6 months, and the work, while obviously dangerous, is pretty routine. A Mars mission, on the other hand, is a years-long commitment. Most of that time is spent trapped in a tiny capsule with the same few people staring out at, well, nothing but terrifying, boring, unknown space. Just think about that number. Over 200 days. And that's not the mission. That's just the commute, one way. It's basically the equivalent of a 7-month road trip where you can never, ever, ever get out of the car. So, all of this means the idea of the perfect astronaut has never been set in stone. The job description has always changed to fit the mission. Let's take a quick look at how that's happened. You know, back in the 1950s, for Project Mercury, they just needed test pilots, guys who could physically survive being strapped to a rocket. Then by the 80s, the space shuttle opened up room for scientists and engineers. Today, the crews on the ISS are basically full-time researchers in orbit. But for Mars, the future might just belong to a whole new category, the explorer.
I absolutely love this. Think about it. The first American astronauts, these legends, these heroes, were privately called spam in a can. It just perfectly captures how little they actually did besides sit there. We have come a very, very long way since then.
So, if the future of space travel is all about explorers, what do they even look like? Well, funny enough, one of the best examples is a guy you've probably never even heard of. His name is Joe Dituri, and in 2023 he did something pretty incredible. He spent 100 straight days living in a tiny underwater lab, and he did it specifically to study the physical and psychological toll of a mission, just like the one to Mars. This quote, it really says it all, doesn't it? He is completely at home, totally comfortable, in an environment that most of us would find absolutely terrifying. And that joyful acceptance of the extreme might just be the secret ingredient for a Mars crew. I mean, his resume is just wild. He's a former naval saturation diver, a biomedical engineering professor, and has over 800 skydives, even though he says he dislikes heights. He's been described as bombastic, which, let's be honest, probably means he wouldn't pass NASA's current psychological screening. But for Mars, a background like this offers a kind of resilience that your typical, more buttoned-up candidate just doesn't have. But of course, a guy with 822 skydives brings up the biggest objection to hiring explorers, right? That flashing red light, their appetite for risk.
And this is the traditional NASA mindset, boiled down perfectly by organizational psychologist Kelly Slack. You just don't want thrill seekers. From the very beginning, even the original Mercury 7 astronauts knew to downplay their daring side in interviews because they were afraid it would be seen as a reckless death wish. But what if we've been looking at this trait all wrong? What if it's not about thrill-seeking at all? What if it's actually an expression of something else, a super powerful, long-term motivation? It's not recklessness. It's the kind of deep internal drive you need to push boundaries and endure years in deep space to achieve something monumental.
And that incredible drive is connected to a very specific psychological trait that might just be the secret ingredient for surviving a trip to Mars. Okay, it's a bit of a mouthful,
but the concept is called salutogenesis. And to put it really simply, it's the ability to find meaning and inspiration in the journey itself, not just waiting for the destination. It's about being able to create your own sense of wonder, even when your entire world is a cramped, dangerous metal box.
And this is where the current model kind of falls short. A study of ISS crew journals found very few mentions of beauty or wonder. You can see that in the tiny bar on the left. The explorer mindset, though, it prioritizes this ability. For a short mission, maybe that's fine. But on a years-long journey to Mars, being able to generate your own sense of wonder, that could be the difference between success and total psychological collapse.
Which brings us right back to Joe Dituri. Down there in the pitch-black, murky water, he would shine a flashlight out his little porthole just to watch the plankton swarm the beam of light. He literally found his own stars in the darkness. Now that is salutogenesis in action.
And look, this isn't just some hypothetical idea. This shift is already happening. NASA is already starting to select astronauts who fit this new mold. Take a look at Christina Koch, an astronaut on the upcoming Artemis II moon mission. She's got the traditional engineering degree, check, but she also has a hardcore explorer's resume, including spending an entire winter at the South Pole. She's this perfect blend of the old right stuff and the new. And really, is it any surprise she already holds the record for the longest single spaceflight by a woman?
Ultimately, it comes down to what Pascal Lee of the Mars Institute says. A Mars crew can't just be jacks of all trades. They need to be aces of several trades. They need people who can be a doctor one day, a mechanic the next, and a geologist the day after that, all while somehow staying sane millions and millions of miles from home.
So, it all leaves us with this one final thought. As we're building the incredible rockets and technology to take us to other worlds, maybe the most important thing we need to build is a new understanding of the human spirit, to rediscover that sense of wonder and exploration that got us looking at the stars in the first place.